All right, so we're diving deep into The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick today.
Ooh, this is a good one.
It is, right? You're trying to build something that people really need, not just what they say they need.
Right, get past all that, like all the fluff.
Yeah, and build something they actually, truly love. And this book kind of gets at that.
It does. It uses a really great analogy.
It does.
Talking to your mom.
Yeah, like, you go to your mom with your business idea.
Of course she's going to love it.
She's going to love it,
Yeah.
even if it's, destined to fail. We've all been there.
Absolutely. Been there.
So how do you get past those, empty compliments and actually uncover the truth?
Well, that's where these rules, these mom test rules come in. So the first one is you want to talk about their life instead of your idea.
Okay.
So an example is, let's say you're building a meal planning app.
Okay.
Instead of saying, wouldn't it be great if there was an app that did X, Y, and Z? You'd ask, tell me about your biggest frustrations with planning family meals.
Okay, so it's about understanding their world before you even, introduce your solution.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, what's rule number 2?
So rule number 2 is ask about specifics in the past instead of generics or opinions about the future.
Okay.
Because people are much more honest about what they've actually done than what they might do, right?
Yeah.
So instead of saying, would you use an app that suggests recipes based on your dietary needs, you could ask, tell me about the last time you struggled to find a recipe that worked for everyone in your family.
That's smart. It forces them to really think concretely, and you actually see what their behavior patterns are.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then rule number 3, talk less and listen more.
Oh, this is a hard one.
It is.
Especially for us enthusiastic types.
It is. It is.
But I get it. You want them to kind of lead the conversation more than you leading them.
That's the idea.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now, earlier you mentioned something about bad data. What exactly did Fitzpatrick mean by that?
So he breaks bad data down into 3 categories: compliments, fluff, and ideas.
Okay.
They all sound really positive, right? But they can be incredibly misleading.
Okay.
Let's take compliments, for instance. We all love getting compliments. They make us feel gooder,
Yeah.
but they don't always give us the, genuine feedback that we need, right?
Right.
They're often just politeness
Yeah.
or someone trying to protect our feelings.
I always think about, those participation trophies that we all got as kids.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't really mean you were good at soccer.
Exactly, but you felt good getting it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when someone says, I love your idea,
Right.
dig deeper. Ask, what specifically do you like about it? Or have you used something similar before? What worked and what didn't?
Okay, so instead of just basking in the glow of that compliment,
Right.
you're using it as a springboard to go deeper.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay, what about fluff?
So fluff is all about vague claims and hypothetical maybes. I might say, I would totally buy that.
Right.
That sounds great, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're actually going to pull out their wallet, right?
Right.
So to avoid getting misled by fluff, we want to try to anchor those statements in reality. So instead of asking, would you pay for this? Maybe you ask, what's your budget for something like this? Or have you ever paid for a similar service?
Yeah, so you're taking those vague notions, so you're bringing them down to earth a little bit.
Right.
And getting a real sense of whether they're actually committed or not.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Ideas, you mentioned those could be kind of tricky too.
Yeah, because they can be disguised as really helpful feedback.
Right.
So when someone's like, oh, you should totally add this feature, it's very flattering.
Yes.
But we have to remember that our job is not just to blindly implement every idea that's thrown our way, right?
It's to figure out why they want that.
Exactly.
Right.
So instead of just being like, oh, that's a great idea, we'll add that to the list. We ask things like, what problem are you trying to solve with that feature? Or how are you currently handling this without that feature?
You're going deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And you see if it's actually valuable or just a shiny distraction, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now, Fitzpatrick also talks about asking these world-rocking scary questions. The questions that might actually reveal flaws in our precious idea. Okay.
So this sounds a little terrifying.
It does sound scary, yeah.
But why would we actually want to do that? Because those uncomfortable truths can be super valuable. And he gives this example of a company building software for lawyers.
Oh, okay.
And they forgot to ask this very crucial question: how lawyers actually get paid for a specific type of work.
Oh, no.
And so it ended up costing them a fortune because they had to completely rework their pricing model.
Wow, so they got pretty far down the road.
They did.
And then realized,
oh, this doesn't work at all.
ouch.
Yeah.
That's a costly lesson.
It is. So how do we go about asking those really tough questions without scaring away all of our potential customers.
Yeah.
You have to frame it correctly.
Okay.
So, for example, you could say, imagine, worst case scenario, this product totally fails. What do you think would be the most likely reason
Okay.
from a customer's perspective?
Okay.
And so it's not being negative, it's just trying to figure out where those pitfalls could be.
Yeah, and it kind of brings them into that problem-solving mindset with you.
Exactly.
I like that. So we've talked about the importance of asking the right questions, avoiding those misleading signals like compliments and fluff, really digging deep to understand like what their needs are and what their motivations are, but like how do we actually know if someone is truly interested in our product?
That's where commitment and advancement come in.
Okay, can you explain what those mean?
Sure. So commitment is basically looking for tangible signs that someone is truly invested in your product. So it's not just them saying, I like it. It's them being willing to, put skin in the game.
Put their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. So instead of accepting a vague, that sounds interesting, we might push for a more concrete commitment. Like, would you be willing to sign up for our beta program?
Okay, yeah.
Or would you be interested in pre-ordering the product?
So you're taking that initial interest and you're trying to get them to take some kind of action.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then advancement is about strategically moving the relationship forward to the next stage.
Okay.
So if they are interested in that beta program, then maybe the next step is scheduling a demo or, introducing them to some of our potential users.
So every interaction is an opportunity to not just learn, but also to kind of nudge that relationship forward.
Exactly. It's about building momentum.
Okay.
And identifying those customers that are really enthusiastic about what you're building.
Yeah, I like that. Now, this all sounds great in theory, but where do we actually find these conversations? I mean, knowing how to talk to customers is one thing, but actually getting them in a room with you is another.
You're telling me?
Yeah.
So there's a few strategies that Fitzpatrick recommends.
Okay.
One is consider going to industry events
Okay.
or maybe joining some online communities.
Okay, so you're immersing yourself in their world.
Right. Yeah.
All right, what else?
Think about your kind of ideal customer profile.
Okay.
And see if there are any watering holes you can identify.
Like that coffee shop where all the freelancers hang out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate the power of just casual conversations.
Oh, for sure.
You never know when, a chance encounter might actually lead to some really valuable insights.
Got to keep those entrepreneurial antennae up.
Absolutely. And don't forget about online content. Creating valuable blog posts, videos, podcasts that can attract potential customers to you.
Right, so you become the magnet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fitzpatrick also emphasizes the importance of narrowing our focus and really understanding a specific target market, and he calls this customer slicing.
Okay, yeah, I remember reading about that. Can you remind me why that's so important?
You got it. So you can't be everything to everyone, right?
Right.
Trying to cater to too many different needs at once just leads to a product that's not really great for anyone.
Like that jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this great example from the book where he talks about an educational app.
Okay.
For students.
Yeah.
But students is a very broad category.
It is.
You've got, elementary school students, you've got high school students, college students, adults going back to school.
Right. An app for a first grader learning to read is going to be very different than an app for someone studying for the MCATs.
Exactly. So that's where customer slicing come in. It helps you narrow down that focus.
Wow.
So in your case, you're building this meal planning app.
I am, yeah.
So you've already kind of sliced off this segment of busy families.
Okay.
But we can even go deeper than that, right? Are you targeting families with young children who are struggling to introduce new foods? Are you targeting families that have multiple dietary restrictions? Are they trying to eat more sustainably?
I see what you mean. You get more specific so you can really tailor the app.
Exactly. And as you slice and dice those customer segments, you'll start to see those golden nuggets, those shared needs, the common pain points, the specific language that they use.
And then that informs everything, right? Like your marketing message and how you prioritize features and your whole product roadmap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, finding your ideal customer segment isn't just about reading market research reports.
Right.
Or analyzing demographics.
Right. You got to get out there and talk to them.
You got it. Those conversations are where the magic really happens.
Yeah.
And Fitzpatrick suggests kind of approaching these conversations not just as a search for customers, but as a search for advisors.
Oh, interesting.
I like that.
Kind of a subtle shift.
Yeah.
But it can make a big difference. Yeah, because you're going in with a different mindset.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking I'm interviewing you, it's more I'm seeking your guidance.
Exactly.
Yeah, and people like to feel like they're the expert, right?
They do.
So you're tapping into that. Okay, so how do we actually apply this advisor mindset when we're like actually trying to find and have these conversations?
So Fitzpatrick kind of recommends a two-pronged approach.
Okay.
Going to the customers and then bringing the customers to you.
Okay.
So going to the customers, that could be attending industry events,
Okay.
conferences, meetups,
Mm-hmm.
joining online forums, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups.
Yeah. So you're looking for places where they already are.
Exactly.
Okay.
And again, those casual encounters, don't underestimate the power of those.
For sure.
You might, be at the coffee shop, strike up a conversation with someone.
Right.
They end up being your ideal customer.
Yeah.
You connect with someone on Twitter.
Right.
They share some amazing insight.
You just got to be ready like all the time.
All the time, yeah.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to cold outreach,
Yeah.
you've got to have a good excuse to contact them.
You can't just be like, hey, can I pick your brain?
Right, exactly. You got to think about what's in it for them.
Okay.
So maybe you offer to share some of your preliminary research findings.
Okay.
Or invite them to participate in a quick survey.
So you're giving them something of value.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about bringing the customers to you?
So that could be things like creating valuable content.
Okay, so like blog posts, maybe videos.
Yeah.
Maybe even starting a podcast.
Maybe even starting a podcast. So if you're in the meal planning space,
Right.
you're creating content around that. You're going to naturally attract those people that are interested in that.
So you build the community.
Exactly.
I like
And then
that.
those conversations flow much more easily.
Cool, that makes sense. Now, I have to admit, like, sometimes just the thought of reaching out to people, it can feel kind of daunting.
It can.
Yeah.
It can.
Like you have that fear of rejection.
For sure.
The fear of putting yourself out there.
Absolutely.
What does Fitzpatrick have to say about that?
Well, he reminds us that, failure is an inevitable part of this journey.
Oh, yeah.
It's not something to be afraid of.
Right.
It's something to embrace,
Yeah.
And to view those conversations,
Okay.
even the ones that don't go so well,
Right.
as valuable learning experience.
Okay. Yeah. So you're experimenting.
You're experimenting,
Yeah.
not necessarily testing.
You're not taking a test.
No.
Okay. I like that. Now, he also talks about like involving your whole team in this customer discovery process.
He does.
Why is that so important?
Because it shouldn't just be the CEO or the product manager going to these meetings
Okay.
and then, dictating what the rest of the team should be doing.
Right. It's not just the business guy going out and being like the voice of the customer for everybody.
Exactly. The whole team should be involved.
Okay.
And that starts with pre-meeting prep, right?
Okay.
So before each customer conversation,
Yeah.
you should gather the team together, define your goals for that interaction.
Okay. So you go in with like a purpose?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are your hypotheses?
Right.
And then what are the questions you need to ask to validate or invalidate those?
You're not just winging it.
Right.
Okay.
And Fitzpatrick recommends asking this very simple but powerful question.
Okay.
If this company fails, what is most likely to have killed it?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is.
But an important one, right?
But it helps you focus on those critical failure points,
yeah.
both on the customer side and the product side.
It's about getting ahead of it.
Exactly. So
Okay.
once you've defined your goals, identified those potential risks,
Yeah.
how do you actually decide who should be in those conversations?
Right. Because you can't have everyone in every meeting.
No, you can't. So while the founders should definitely be involved in at least some of them,
Okay.
it's also important to bring in other key team members,
Okay.
like engineers, designers, marketers, anyone who's making decisions that impact the product.
So you're bringing diverse perspectives into the room.
Exactly.
And you get a much richer, more well-rounded understanding.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Now, what about sending a junior team member or an intern to these meetings?
Generally speaking, no.
Okay.
Because while it's fine to have someone taking notes,
Yeah.
Observing the conversation,
Right.
it really needs to be the founders
Okay.
and the key decision makers.
Right, because they're the ones who have to absorb the information,
Yeah.
internalize it, and then make decisions based on it.
It's one thing to hear that a problem isn't real
Yeah.
or that your solution isn't resonating.
Right.
But it's another thing to really internalize that
Yes.
and adjust accordingly.
And it's easy for someone who's not fully invested to kind of downplay those negative things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like playing telephone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the message gets a little bit distorted.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So the founders and the core team, they're leading these conversations.
They are.
But is there ever a time where you can bring in outside help?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
As long as it's the right kind of help.
Okay.
You could hire someone to help with scheduling,
Yeah.
doing background research on potential customers.
Oh.
They could even sit in on the conversations and take really detailed notes.
Okay.
But the key is that you, the founder,
Right.
are still actively participating.
Right.
You're listening to that raw feedback.
Okay.
And you're ultimately the ones making the decisions
Okay.
about how to interpret and act on that
You
feedback.
can't outsource learning, basically.
Exactly. You can't outsource your own learning.
I like that. All right, so we've talked about involving the team, but what about just like the logistics of actually running these conversations?
Okay, so Fitzpatrick emphasizes like this pre-meeting prep, right?
Yeah.
Defining your goals, formulating your hypotheses,
Right.
and figuring out like what questions are going to actually help you validate or invalidate those.
So you're going in with that structure.
You are.
From that purpose.
You are.
Yeah.
He also recommends like having a very structured note-taking system,
Okay.
whether that's a spreadsheet, index cards, just like a dedicated notebook,
Yeah.
but making sure you're capturing those key takeaways,
Right.
the customer quotes, any action items.
Okay.
And he's a big fan of using those signal symbols
He is.
to kind of like highlight those important nuggets of information.
Yeah, like that dollar sign for when people talk about money.
That's a good one. Yeah.
The light bulb for a new insight.
Huh.
Yeah. It's all about making those notes really easy to reference later.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, so after the conversation, then what?
Then it's post-meeting review time.
Oh, this is where the magic happens.
This is where the magic happens. So you gather the team,
Okay.
you lay out your notes,
Yeah.
and you just discuss like, what are the key insights?
Okay.
What surprised you?
Uh-huh.
What assumptions were validated? What assumptions were completely destroyed?
You're turning all those individual conversations into like collective knowledge.
Right.
That then drives the business.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it should be just as structured and thorough
Oh, wow.
as that pre-meeting prep.
Okay.
So you're not just like casually chatting about the conversation.
Yeah.
You're systematically analyzing
Okay.
what was said.
Right.
And those takeaways should be documented
Okay.
and shared with the entire team.
Gotcha. So if my initial approach isn't working,
Yes.
if I'm not getting the insights I need,
Uh-huh.
you're saying don't be afraid to kind of like iterate on the process?
100%.
Okay.
So, experiment with different questions.
Yeah.
Try different note-taking methods.
Right.
Involve different team members.
It's about finding what works for you and your team.
Exactly.
Cool. I like that. Now, let's talk a little bit about avoiding bad data because, like, we've talked about it a little bit, but Fitzpatrick really digs into this.
He does.
And there are all these, like, misleading signals that can really throw us off track.
There are.
Yeah.
He provides a brilliant framework for identifying these pitfalls and navigating them successfully.
Okay. I'm ready.
Let's go. First and foremost, compliments.
Okay.
You've got to be careful of compliments.
Right, because they make us feel
They
good,
make us feel good.
but they can be misleading.
They can be very misleading.
Yeah.
So, as Fitzpatrick points out, people will often compliment us out of politeness.
Sure.
Or, they want to be supportive.
Right.
Or they just get caught up in the excitement of the moment.
Yeah, they want to be nice.
They want to be nice.
Okay.
So it's like when, your mom tells you your macaroni necklace is the most beautiful thing she's ever seen.
Exactly. It's heartwarming, but it's not necessarily true.
Exactly, but it makes you feel good.
Right.
And so those compliments, while they might make us feel good,
Yeah.
they don't actually tell us anything about the true value of our idea.
Right.
So how do we avoid getting seduced by those empty praises?
Yeah, because I think it's easy to get caught up in that.
It is.
You hear, oh, I love your idea, and you just want to, like, ride that wave.
You do.
Yeah.
But Fitzpatrick recommends we deflect those compliments.
Okay.
So instead of just saying thank you, you redirect the conversation back to their needs and their experiences.
Okay.
So ask them questions like, what are you currently doing to address this problem? What are your biggest frustrations? What solutions have you tried in the past?
Okay, so you're shifting the focus back to their world.
Back to their world.
Instead of just, like, getting that, like, little dopamine hit from the compliment, you're actually digging deeper.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, fluff. Can you remind me what he means by fluff?
So fluff is all about those generic claims and, hypothetical maybes.
Okay.
I would definitely buy that. Sounds great,
Right.
but doesn't actually tell us anything about their actual intentions.
Right, and those are so easy to get excited about.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, like, I'm going to have 1 million customers.
Right.
Yeah.
But Fitzpatrick reminds us that, like, those initial reactions don't always translate to real-world behavior.
Right.
So how do we separate those genuine signals from the empty promises?
Yeah.
We've got to anchor them in reality.
How do we do that?
So we ask questions that ground those statements in the customer's, like, past experiences,
Okay.
their current behaviors,
Right.
and their specific constraints.
So instead of saying, would you buy that, maybe it's, have you ever bought anything like this before?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or what's your budget for something like this?
So you're forcing them to, like, really think about the practicalities of it.
Exactly. And separating those dreamers from the doers, right?
I like that.
Okay, so the third type of bad data
Okay.
is ideas.
Right. And this one is tricky, I think, because it's often disguised as like helpful feedback,
It
right?
is, yes.
Yeah.
So those feature requests, those product suggestions, those unsolicited pieces of advice,
Yeah.
and while they might be well-intentioned,
Right.
Fitzpatrick cautions us against blindly following every single one of them.
Right. Because it might not be the right thing for them
It
in the
might
moment.
not be. So
Yeah.
how do we navigate those?
Yeah.
This is dig beneath the surface.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, that's a great idea,
Yeah.
ask, why is that feature important to you?
Okay.
What problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah.
What are you currently doing to work around this problem?
So you're understanding the motivation behind the suggestion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can see if it's truly valuable
Okay.
or just a shiny distraction.
Yeah, you separate the symptom from the root cause.
Exactly.
Okay, so just to recap here, when it comes to avoiding bad data,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways we need to remember?
All right. So compliments, fluff, and ideas can be incredibly misleading.
Okay.
We want to deflect those compliments,
Yeah.
anchor those fluffy statements to reality,
Okay.
and dig beneath the surface of those unsolicited ideas.
Awesome.
And by applying these techniques, we ensure we're basing our decisions on solid data,
Love it.
not wishful thinking.
Not wishful thinking. That's good. Now, Fitzpatrick also gives us like some really specific tips on how to frame these customers' conversations.
He does.
And I think this framing is so crucial, right?
It is.
Because if you don't frame it, right,
Mm-hmm.
it can easily just turn into like a sales pitch
Yeah.
or like a meandering chat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he actually gives us this 5-step framework.
Okay, I'm ready.
So this is designed to kind of clarify our purpose,
Right.
pique their interest, and position ourselves as like helpful and knowledgeable.
Okay, I'm ready for these 5 steps. Hit me.
All right, step 1 is articulate your vision.
Okay, so this is where you're painting the picture of the problem you're trying to solve.
Exactly.
The impact you want to make on the world.
Yep.
Okay.
And by sharing that vision, you create a sense of purpose and excitement.
Yeah,
You're inviting them to like join you on this journey.
I like that.
Okay, step 2
Okay,
is frame the conversation.
okay,
So you're explaining why you're having this conversation, what you're hoping to learn,
okay.
and like what role they can play in helping you achieve your goals.
So you're being really upfront and transparent.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it. What's number 3?
All right. This one might sound a little counterintuitive,
Okay.
but it's actually super powerful. Show weakness.
Wait, what?
Show weakness.
Why would we do that?
Okay, so by acknowledging your limitations,
Yeah.
admitting that you don't have all the answers,
Okay.
it makes you more relatable. It makes you more vulnerable,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And it gives the customer an opportunity to feel like they're part of the solution.
So you're turning it into like a collaborative brainstorming session.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, step 4 is to put the customer on a pedestal.
Okay.
So you highlight their expertise, their experience, their unique insights.
You're buttering them up.
A little bit, yeah.
I like it.
So make them feel like the expert.
Okay.
And then step 5,
Yeah.
ask for help.
Okay.
Be explicit about what you need from them.
Okay.
Whether it's feedback on a specific feature,
Yeah.
advice on, navigating a particular challenge,
Right.
or even an intro to a key contact.
Okay.
By being direct,
Yeah.
you increase your chances of actually getting that help.
So it's vision, framing, weakness, pedestal, and ask.
You got it.
I like it. It's a nice little framework.
It is. It is.
Okay, now one final point on those conversations.
Okay.
Remember to keep it casual.
Yes, keep it casual.
Right? Like, I know for me, sometimes those like informal chats over coffee are way more insightful
Oh,
than like
sure.
those stuffy like boardroom meetings.
People are just more relaxed. They
Yeah.
let their guard down a little bit,
Yeah.
and they're more likely to just share like their genuine thoughts and experiences
Right.
when they feel comfortable.
Okay, so how do we actually create that like relaxed, informal atmosphere?
Well, first of all, avoid those formal interview style questions.
Right.
Like on a scale of 1 to 5.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Or tell me about your experience with.
It's not an interrogation, it's a conversation.
Exactly. Focus on those open-ended questions that really encourage storytelling.
Okay.
So tell me about a time when.
Yeah.
What's your biggest challenge with?
Okay.
And don't be afraid to share your own experiences, your own vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Let them know you're human.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
And then whenever possible, meet in person,
Yeah.
whether it's coffee, lunch, a walk in the park.
Yeah. Get out of the office.
Get out of the office.
Yeah.
Because those informal settings really help foster like that sense of camaraderie
Yeah.
and encourage those authentic conversations.
Okay, I love that. Now, I know that Fitzpatrick talks about like involving your whole team in this customer discovery process.
Yes, he does.
Why is that so important?
Well, customer insights shouldn't be siloed
Okay.
within like a single department or individual.
Right.
Everyone should have a voice in shaping those conversations and interpreting that feedback.
So it's not just like the product people or the sales people.
No. Everyone from the engineers
Okay.
to the marketers everyone plays a role
Okay.
in creating a product that actually meets the needs of those customers.
All right. And this starts with like the pre-meeting prep, right?
Yes.
It does. So before you even have the conversation with the customer,
Yeah.
you're gathering your team.
You are.
You're defining your goals.
Yep, you're formulating your hypotheses.
You're coming up with those key questions.
You got it.
Okay.
And Fitzpatrick actually recommends this question.
Okay.
If this company fails,
Yeah.
what is most likely to have killed it?
Ooh, that is a tough one.
It is. It is.
But it forces you to really think, right?
It does. It forces you to think about those critical failure points
Okay.
on the customer side, on the product side.
Yeah.
And by identifying them early, you can start like exploring those solutions.
Right. So you're not just waiting for something bad to happen.
No.
You're being proactive.
Exactly.
Okay.
So when you've defined your goals, you've identified the potential risks,
Yeah.
how do you decide who should be in those customer conversations?
Yeah, because you can't bring everyone.
No, you can't.
Okay.
So while the founders should definitely be involved in some of them,
Okay.
you also want to bring in other key team members.
Yeah.
Engineers, designers, marketers.
Like we said, diverse perspectives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by having those different viewpoints,
Yeah.
you're more likely to like catch those blind spots.
Right.
And avoid making assumptions based on just a single person's interpretation.
Yeah. You want to get the full picture.
Exactly.
Now, what about sending like a junior team member or an intern to these conversations?
Generally speaking, no.
Okay.
So while it's fine to have someone taking notes,
Okay.
observing the conversation,
Right.
it really needs to be the founders
Okay.
and the key decision makers that are actually in the room.
Because they're the ones who have to really internalize that feedback.
Yes.
Right.
It's one thing to like hear that a problem isn't real
Right.
or that your solution isn't resonating,
Yeah.
but it's another thing to like truly internalize that feedback
Yeah.
and then adjust your course.
And it's easy for someone who is not as invested to just be like, oh, yeah, that's fine.
Oh, absolutely
Not
fine.
fine.
Yeah, they'll downplay it or sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Like the telephone game, it gets all distorted.
It does. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So the founders and the core team, they're really driving these conversations.
They are.
Is there ever a time where you can bring in outside help?
Yes, as long as it's the right kind of help.
Okay.
So, you could hire someone to help with scheduling,
Okay.
doing background research on the potential customer.
Right.
Maybe they even sit in on the conversations and take really detailed notes.
Okay.
But the key is that you, the founders,
Yeah.
are still actively participating.
Right.
You're listening to that raw feedback.
Okay.
And you're ultimately the ones making the decisions.
Okay, so you're not outsourcing your learning.
Exactly. You can't outsource your learning.
I like that.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the logistics of actually running those conversations.
Okay, yeah, so we've talked about the team. Now, how do you actually make it happen?
Yeah, so Fitzpatrick, again, he emphasizes this pre-meeting prep.
Right.
So, defining those goals,
Okay.
formulating those hypotheses,
Yeah.
and figuring out what questions are going to help you validate or invalidate those hypotheses.
So you're going in with a plan.
You are.
Okay.
He also recommends having like a really structured note-taking system,
Okay, yeah.
whether that's a spreadsheet,
Uh-huh.
index cards,
Uh-huh.
a dedicated notebook.
Right.
But you want to make sure you're capturing those key takeaways,
Right.
customer quotes, any action items.
Okay.
And he's a big fan of using those signal symbols,
Yeah.
to really highlight those important nuggets of information.
Like the money one.
Like the money one, yeah.
Yeah.
So, a dollar sign for money mentions, a light bulb for new insights, a check mark for feature requests.
Yeah, you're making those notes really easy to go back and reference.
Exactly. So you can skim them quickly and search them easily.
Okay, so you have the conversation, you take your notes, then what?
Then it's time for that post-meeting review.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
This is where the magic happens.
Yeah.
You gather the team,
Yeah.
you lay out all your notes, and you discuss, like, what are the key insights?
Okay.
What surprised you? What assumptions were validated and which ones were totally blown out of the water?
You're turning all those individual conversations into this collective knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that should inform, like, everything you do moving forward.
Right. It's not just for one person. This is for everyone.
For everyone.
Okay.
And it should be just as structured and thorough
Yeah.
as that pre-meeting prep.
Okay, so you're not just like having a casual conversation about the conversation. It's structured.
Very structured.
Okay.
And those takeaways should be documented
Yeah.
and shared with the entire team.
So that everyone's on the same page.
Everyone's on the same page.
Got it. So if my initial approach isn't working,
Yeah.
I'm not getting the insights I need, I'm hitting these roadblocks.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Adjust your process.
Okay.
So experiment with different questions.
Yeah.
Try different note-taking methods.
Yeah.
Involve different team members.
It's about finding what works for you.
It is.
Okay, I like that. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about avoiding bad data.
Yes.
Because Fitzpatrick warns us there are all these, like, misleading signals out
Oh,
there
there are.
that can really lead us down the wrong path.
Absolutely. And he gives us a framework for identifying these pitfalls and navigating them.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, first and foremost, we've got to be careful of compliments
Oh, yeah.
because they feel good,
They do.
but they can be really misleading.
Yeah.
And as Fitzpatrick points out, people often compliment us out of politeness,
Right.
a desire to be supportive, or they just get caught up in the excitement of the moment.
They want to be nice.
They want to be nice.
And it's like that thing, again, with the mom and the macaroni necklace.
Yeah.
It's heartwarming, but it's not necessarily true.
And it makes you feel good.
It does, yeah.
But it doesn't actually tell you anything about the true value of that necklace.
Of our idea, yeah.
Of your idea, yeah.
So how do we avoid getting seduced by those empty praises?
Well, Fitzpatrick recommends a very simple but powerful technique.
Okay.
Deflect the compliment.
So don't just say thank you.
Don't just say thank you.
Okay.
Redirect the conversation
Okay.
back to their needs, their pain points, their experiences.
So ask them questions like, what are you currently doing to address this problem?
Yeah. What are your biggest frustrations?
Yeah.
What solutions have you tried in the past?
So you're shifting the focus back to their world.
Back to their world.
Instead of just like basking in the glow of that compliment.
Exactly.
You're actually trying to get some information.
You are.
Okay, I like that. What about fluff?
So fluff is all about those generic claims, hypothetical maybes,
Okay.
future tense statements,
Okay.
I would definitely buy that.
Those are exciting.
They are exciting.
Yeah.
But they don't actually commit them to anything.
Right.
So Fitzpatrick reminds us that those initial reactions don't always translate to real-world behavior.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get caught up in that.
Oh, it is.
Like, oh, I'm going to have 1 million customers.
Yeah, but we've got to, separate the dreamers from the doers.
Okay.
So how do we do that?
How do we do that?
We anchor those fluffy statements in reality.
Okay.
And we do that by asking questions that ground those statements in their past experiences, their current behavior, their specific constraints.
Okay, so instead of, would you buy that, it's more like, have you ever purchased anything like this before?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or what's your budget for something like this?
So you're forcing them to think about the practicalities.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. Now, the third one is ideas.
Ideas.
And I think this one's tricky because it often comes disguised as, like, really helpful feedback.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you should totally add this feature.
Yeah.
And it's very flattering, but we have to remember our job is not to blindly implement every idea.
Right.
So how do we navigate those?
Yeah.
We dig beneath the surface.
Okay.
So instead of just being like, oh, that's a great idea, we ask, why is that feature important to you? What problem are you trying to solve with that? How are you currently handling this without that feature?
So you're really understanding the motivation behind the idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you can decide if it's valuable or just a shiny distraction.
You separate the symptom from the root cause?
Exactly.
Hey, I love that. So just to recap, when it comes to avoiding bad data,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways we need to remember?
All right. So compliments, fluff, and ideas can be very misleading.
Okay.
We want to deflect those compliments,
Okay.
anchor those fluffy statements to reality,
Gotcha.
and dig beneath the surface of those unsolicited ideas.
Awesome.
And by applying these techniques, we make sure we're basing our decisions on solid data,
Yes.
not wishful thinking.
Not wishful thinking.
All right, let's talk a little bit about how to frame those customer conversations.
Okay, yeah, because framing is so crucial.
It is.
Like, if you don't frame it right,
Yeah,
it can just go off the rails. It
Yeah,
can
right.
turn into, like, a sales pitch
it can.
or, like, just a random conversation about nothing.
Yeah, so Fitzpatrick gives us this 5-step framework.
I love frameworks.
It's designed to clarify our purpose, pique the customer's interest, and position ourselves as, like, helpful and knowledgeable.
Okay, I'm ready for these 5 steps. Hit me.
Okay, step 1, articulate your vision.
All right, so you're painting the picture of the problem you're trying to solve, the impact you want to make on the world.
Exactly.
Okay.
And by sharing that vision, you create a sense of purpose,
Yeah.
excitement,
Yeah.
and you're inviting them to, like, join you on this journey.
Cool. I like that.
Okay, step 2 is frame the conversation.
Okay.
So you explain why you're having the conversation,
Okay.
what you're hoping to learn,
Okay.
what role they can play in helping you achieve your goals.
So you're just being upfront and transparent.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. What's number 3?
All right, this one might sound a little counterintuitive,
Okay.
but it's actually super powerful. You ready?
I'm ready.
Show
Not
weakness.
so weakness.
Why would I do that? So, by acknowledging your limitations,
Okay.
admitting you don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
it makes you more relatable,
Okay.
more vulnerable,
Right.
and it gives the customer the opportunity to feel like they're part of the solution.
Oh, so you kind of turning it into a brainstorming thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, step 4 is to put the customer on a pedestal.
Okay.
So highlight their expertise, their experience, their unique insights.
You're making them feel good.
You are.
Oh,
Make them feel like the expert.
okay, yeah.
And then step 5 is ask for help.
Okay.
So be very explicit about what you need from them,
Okay.
whether that's feedback on a specific feature, advice on like navigating a specific challenge, or even an intro to a key contact.
Okay.
By being direct about what you need, you increase your chances of actually getting that help.
So vision, framing, weakness, pedestal, and ask.
You got it.
All right. I like it. Now, one final point on those conversations. Keep it casual.
Keep it casual.
Because I know, like, for me personally, sometimes those informal conversations, like over coffee or over lunch, are so much more insightful than, like, being in a boardroom.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
People are just more relaxed.
Right.
They let their guard down. They share their genuine thoughts and feelings when they feel comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some specific tips for creating that, like, relaxed atmosphere?
Okay, so first of all, avoid those formal interview-style questions.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like on a scale of 1 to 5, or tell me about your experience with.
No more of those.
No more of those because it's not an interrogation.
Right.
It's a conversation.
Okay.
So focus on those open-ended questions that encourage storytelling.
Okay.
Tell me about a time when, or what's your biggest challenge with?
Okay. Yeah.
And don't be afraid to share your own experiences and vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Let them know you're human.
Let them know you're human, exactly.
Okay.
And then whenever possible, try to meet in person.
Yeah.
You know, over coffee, lunch, a walk in the park.
Get out of the office.
Get out of the office. Those informal settings foster a sense of camaraderie and really encourage those authentic conversations.
All right. Now, I know that Fitzpatrick also talks about involving your entire team in this customer discovery process.
He does.
Why is that so important?
Customer insights shouldn't be siloed within like a single department
Okay.
or individual.
Right.
Everyone, from the engineers to the marketers,
Yeah.
should have a voice in shaping those conversations, interpreting that feedback.
It's not just the product people or the sales people.
Exactly. Everyone in the company
Yeah.
plays a role in creating a product that actually meets the needs of the customer.
All right. And that starts with like pre-meeting prep, right?
It does, yeah.
So before you even have the conversation with the customer,
Yep.
you're getting the team together.
We are.
Defining your goals,
Yeah.
formulating your hypotheses, figuring out the key questions that you're going to ask.
You got it.
And you mentioned this earlier, but he really emphasizes this question. If this company fails, what is most likely to have killed it?
Yes. It's a powerful question.
It is, but it forces you to think.
It forces you to think about those critical failure points,
Okay.
both on the customer side and the product side.
And it helps you get ahead of those problems.
Exactly.
Okay.
So when you've defined your goals, identified the potential risks, how do you actually decide who should be in those conversations?
Yeah, because you can't bring everyone to every meeting.
You can't, no. So while the founders should be involved in at least some of them,
Okay.
you also want to bring in other key team members like engineers, designers, marketers.
Yeah.
And like we said, having those different viewpoints helps you catch those blind spots. Avoid making assumptions based on just one person's interpretation.
Okay.
Now, what about sending a junior team member or an intern?
Yeah, like, can I just send my intern?
Generally speaking, no.
Okay.
While it's fine to have someone taking notes, observing,
Okay.
it really needs to be the founders and the key decision makers that are actually in the room.
Because they're the ones who have to internalize that feedback.
Exactly. It's one thing to hear that a problem isn't real
Right.
or that your solution isn't resonating, but it's another thing to like truly internalize that and then adjust your course.
Yeah, and someone who's not as invested in the product could easily just downplay that.
Absolutely. They'll sugarcoat it, downplay it.
It's like the telephone game.
It is. It is.
Okay, so the founders, the core team, they're driving these conversations.
They are.
But are there ever times when you can bring in outside help?
Yes, as long as it's the right kind of help.
Okay.
So you could hire someone to help with scheduling,
Yeah.
doing background research on potential customers.
Okay.
They could sit in on the conversations, take detailed notes.
Okay.
But the key is that you, the founders,
Right.
are actively participating.
Right.
You're listening to that raw feedback,
Gotcha.
and you're ultimately the ones making the decisions about how to interpret that.
So you're not outsourcing your learning.
You can't outsource your learning.
Okay, I like that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the logistics of actually running those conversations.
Right.
So we talked about who should be there.
We did.
What about just like how to run it?
Okay, so Fitzpatrick emphasizes the importance of this pre-meeting prep, right?
Okay.
So defining those goals,
Yeah.
formulating your hypotheses,
Uh-huh.
figuring out what questions are going to help you validate or invalidate those hypotheses.
So you're going in with a purpose by structure.
It also recommends having this structured note-taking system,
Okay.
whether that's a spreadsheet, index cards, a dedicated notebook.
Right.
But capturing those key takeaways, customer quotes, any action items.
Okay.
And he's a big fan of using those signal symbols to highlight those important nuggets of information.
I love the signal
Yeah,
symbols.
they're great.
Yeah.
So a dollar sign for money mentions, a light bulb for new insights,
Uh-huh.
a check mark for feature requests.
It makes the notes really easy to skim later.
It does, yeah.
Okay, so you have the conversation, you take your notes, then what?
Then it's time for that post-meeting review.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
This is where the magic happens. So you gather the team, you lay out your notes,
Okay.
you discuss, like, what are the key insights?
Yeah.
What surprised you? What assumptions were validated? Which ones were completely blown out of the water?
You're turning those individual conversations into this collective knowledge that
Exactly.
everyone can benefit from.
Exactly. And it should inform everything you do.
Right.
And it should be just as structured and thorough as that pre-meeting prep.
Wow, so you're not just like pausely chatting about it?
No,
It's structured.
it's very structured.
Okay.
Those takeaways should be documented, shared with the entire team.
Everyone's on the same page.
Everyone's on the same page.
Awesome. Okay, so if my initial approach isn't working, I'm not getting the insights I need, I'm hitting these roadblocks.
Yeah, if you feel stuck,
Yeah.
adjust the
Yeah.
process,
Okay.
experiment with different questions,
Yeah.
try different note-taking methods, involve different team members.
It's all about finding what works for you.
It is.
Okay, I like that. I can see how those would dig a little deeper and uncover those hidden frustrations or aspirations.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask those what-if questions, even if they feel a bit uncomfortable. For example, what if this product failed? What do you think would be the most likely reason from a customer's perspective?
Okay, that's a bold one, but I can see how it could help uncover potential pitfalls early on, almost like preempting those customer objections before they even come up.
Exactly. Remember, it's not about being negative. It's about being proactive and getting those valuable insights, even if they're not always, what we want to hear.
Now, what about those times when we get so excited about an idea that we jump right into the details, like before we even fully understand the big picture? Fitzpatrick mentioned something about that, right?
He calls it looking before you zoom. It's resisting the temptation to get lost in the weeds before you've truly grasped the customer's overall context, their goals, their priorities.
So before we start talking about features and pricing models and all that,
Yeah,
we need to zoom out and just understand their world.
exactly. Ask those broad, open-ended questions that paint a picture of their current situation. What are their biggest challenges, their aspirations, their non-negotiables? What keeps them up at night? Once you've got that big picture, then you can start zooming in on those specific areas that are relevant to your product.
It's like, making sure you're building the right house before you start worrying about the color of the curtains.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Understanding the foundation before you get caught up in, the aesthetics.
Okay, I like that. Now, you also mentioned this idea of looking for the elephant in the room. Can you remind me what that is and why it's so important?
Yeah, it's about identifying those unspoken issues, those potential deal breakers, those hidden risks that could sabotage your success if you're not aware of them.
I can see how that would be important, yeah. But how do we spot those elephants? It seems like they're pretty good at hiding.
Well, it starts with doing your homework. Before you even talk to a potential customer, you research their industry, their company, their competitors. Look for any red flags or warning signs that might suggest, some underlying challenges or constraints.
So you're not going into those conversations blind.
Exactly. Be prepared. And then, during the conversation itself, don't be afraid to ask those probing questions. Respectfully, but directly address those sensitive areas.
So, for example, if I'm talking to somebody and I get the sense that, budget might be an issue,
Yeah?
I shouldn't shy away from asking about their budget constraints for this type of solution.
Precisely. And by asking those tough questions early on, you can avoid wasting time and energy pursuing opportunities that are, unlikely to pan out. Finally, and this is perhaps the most important tip, trust your gut. If something feels off, if you sense that there's an unspoken issue lurking beneath the surface, don't ignore it.
Just address it head on, even if it feels a little uncomfortable.
Exactly. Those elephants, if left unaddressed, can turn into deal breakers really quickly.
That makes sense. This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for approaching those customer conversations. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one final point that Fitzpatrick really emphasizes, and that's the importance of embracing those uncomfortable truths. Even when they, challenge our assumptions or maybe even reveal flaws in our beloved ideas, it's about loving the bad news, right?
He does, and it's one of the most powerful mindsets we can adopt as entrepreneurs. Those uncomfortable truths, while they might sting a bit at first, are invaluable. They help us course correct, avoid those costly mistakes, and ultimately build better products that truly meet the needs of our customers.
It's almost like viewing those challenges not as setbacks, but as opportunities for growth and learning.
Exactly. Remember, building a successful business is a marathon, not a sprint. those conversations, those insights, those course corrections, they're all part of the journey.
I love that. And he also reminds us that it's going to be okay. Even when things get tough, even when we face those setbacks, we can persevere.
Yeah, he encourages us to embrace those challenges, view those conversations, even the ones that don't go as planned, as valuable learning experiences that ultimately bring us closer to our goals.
So to wrap things up, what's the one key takeaway you want listeners to walk away with today?
Remember, building a successful business starts with understanding your customer. And the MOM test gives us this, brilliant framework for having those conversations, asking the right questions, and extracting those golden nuggets of wisdom that will guide you on that journey.
Fantastic. I can't wait to put these principles into practice.
Yeah, go have those conversations. And as Fitzpatrick says, go build something amazing. See